Good morning from sunny, awakening Dallas, and good afternoon in England. We're here with the great Veronica Hylak, and we're going to be talking some AI and localization things we are passionate about, both of us. Veronica, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Thanks so much, Stefan. Happy to be here. If you don't know me, I'm Veronica. I am an ex-Lang Tech founder. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies, Sony, Walmart, Leidos, with dev teams, AI and ML for over half a decade, starting with the US government on AI autonomous military mission systems. I've been in product management for almost 10 years, and I guess I'm just your tier one kind of product strategy nerd. I just really love solving hard problems that no one bothers to try to fix. Really active in the LangLock industry. I contribute to multilingual a lot. I just had an article that was published a month ago about the top 10 language products of the year, speak at conferences, and I'm part of the AI localization think tank, which is an alliance of executives who just want to help democratize AI information for the entire industry and just help people transition. So, and I also have a vlog where I just like to teach people about AI, and it's the best thing ever. So, but thank you so much for having me.
Hey, you're welcome, and awesome. That's a whole list of things that you're involved in right now. We have our background in multilingual in common. I worked with multilingual for several years as
Mhm.
well, and that's kind of how I got some more visibility in the industry. Let's talk a little bit about your background and how you're coming to localization via data and AI in the military.
Yep.
Maybe you can give us a quick background on that before I ask you a more
Yeah.
specific question about that, because that's not an everyday path. Thank you for your service, by the way.
Yeah, I wasn't in the military. I worked with them,
Okay.
but yeah, I have a very strange career path. I actually studied concert piano in university under scholarship. I was going to be a music copyright attorney. Got into government AI before we called it AI. We called it decision-making software at the time, and then transitioned into the lock industry through a family member. You might know her. She's my mother, Bridget Hylak. Uh, we do have the same last name. I argue I've been in the lock industry for 30 years, as old as I am, because I have seen her run a language company that whole time. But I ended up in this industry because my mother's company needed a piece of software. And me and my co-founder, who were both working in the government at this time, built it pro bono on our nights in our free time, just to kind of help her out. And it quickly grew. A lot of people needed it. We had no idea. And it was business management software to kind of consolidate translation and interpreting tracking under one login, really catered to that end client, because what we saw in the lock industry is everyone was neglecting that end client's workflow, and people didn't want to deal with Google Forms. They didn't want to deal with emails. Things were getting lost. And while client portals existed, they were extensions of CAT tools and TMSs. They didn't feel like the company. It didn't feel like the brand. So we really focused on that end client experience and kind of grew from there. So really was I loved that project so much. We were in some of the largest school districts in the U.S., supporting 300,000 plus students. Um, just really kind of breaking that barrier of entry for the end user. So, but that's kind of how I ended up here and why I'm here today.
Right. You were in San Francisco for a minute there too. That's something else we have in common. I lived 8 years in San Francisco on but I went the other direction. You went to Europe and I came to the United States. In any case, you're big on human-centered design and making AI make sense for humans. What's your first move when turning a powerful but abstract AI capability into a usable product? How do you go about that?
First question would be, is this the right AI for the job? A lot of people don't really realize that there's a lot of different types of AI. I kind of mentioned in the government that we didn't call it AI. My two teams were object detection, computer vision, and virtualization, kind of. And there's a lot of different types of AI. And most people, when they think about AI, they think about ChatGPT, they think about Claude, they think about Gemini, maybe Grok, maybe it's kind of getting in there now. But what I see is everyone kind of has this rush to implement AI because they
Mhm.
want to have AI, because it's the cool thing to have right now. But what they do is they start to retrofit AI in a way that it's not optimized for. So I can give you an example. I still consult quite a bit on just AI implementation. And I had a video surveillance company come to me. They have hundreds of thousands of cameras in the US, and they wanted to implement AI because their stakeholders said they need AI. I'm like, okay, let's talk, let's talk. And they wanted to leverage an LLM to ingest incident reports like this car got broken into, a dog went to the bathroom in this hotel, this kind of thing, to identify what the report type was. Now, keep in mind, this camera company didn't even have object detection, like basically built in their cameras, like off the shelf that's offered in Microsoft. And they wanted to leverage an LLM for something that could have been solved with one single field, which probably would have been better matching incident type. So I see that so much that everyone just thinks, okay, we need to implement ChatGPT because we need to have AI. Well, there's so much better AI out there that has been around for decades that just you don't know is probably better optimized for your flows. So that's kind of the first question I ask.
Yeah. And obviously, you've worked across quite a bit of sectors and industries. How do user expectations differ between enterprise users and school and government? What's the
Well, very,
focus difference there?
yeah. So I've built everything from like B2B, B2B2B, B2B, B2C. They're all different. Enterprises want things that are fast. They want things that are taking care of complicated workflows, and they want it to get them there with really limited barrier to entry. People do not want to like take their teams to spend weeks or months or years implementing something new, training people on things. They don't want that. They want to just get in and out quickly. Government is very slow. They're often using systems that are 20 to 30 to 40 years old. It's really hard to get them to change. You have to really show them the value add and how it's going to save them time and money very quickly, or you're just not going to be part of the conversation. And schools, like education, they often have no infrastructure. They've been neglected. They fight for every right that they have. I mentioned that we were in school districts in the US, and they were our biggest niche that we really started to grow towards because I don't know how to explain it, but they were so passionate about trying to not only try to implement a system that would make their life better, but trying to make us better. And I saw firsthand how much they just fought for everything. So it always was like a win for me when they won on their side. So I wish people cared a little bit more about schools.
Yeah. I work with a lot of schools too, so that's another thing we have in common. But that's a different story. Uh, when you're designing user interface, you're focusing on what, fewer clicks more than usability features, or why do you think that kind of thing is important in multilingual and high stress environments?
Well, it's not just multilingual. I think, well, I'll pull up a few statistics, I guess, multilingual. Um, I came across a stat from User Pilot that said something like 52% of people uninstall apps within the first 30 days because of poor localization.
Mm.
Um, because they feel like that company doesn't care about them. It's too annoying to try to deal with a word that's mistranslated. I've seen it constantly with like Italian, for example. But if we go back to the concept of like user-centric design and designing things in fewer clicks, people don't want to learn anymore. It's something I deal with even when I'm trying to teach people AI. People's brains are fatigued. They have too many apps open all the time. They have too many systems. They have too many, I'm going to say, tabs open in their brains. And trying to learn something new is like, it's going to knock off your ability to get users probably 80 to 90% of the time. When you're designing a system now, if your system takes weeks or months to train, or you even charge to train, you're not gonna make it because people, not only is the speed of technology moving so quickly, but people just don't have that kind of patience anymore. So now you have to design systems that are really focused on that end user, that they understand 85% of what they need to accomplish in your system from the first 2 minutes of being in it. The last like 15% you can get there by some training or them, inquiring through customer service or whatever else. But otherwise, you see how much AI is moving, how much tech is moving. You're not going to make it. Like, that's just kind of the reality nowadays. And it's really important that you focus on that now.
In a way, I find that whatever we're doing software related in AI, that we're still just only putting wrappers around the existing big AI companies' solutions. And so it's almost like,
Mhm.
I don't know whether I have perceived this correctly, but it's almost like there's a democratization of AI technology and there's a lot of users using, say, ChatGPT on a daily basis, but people that are coming up with their own AI solutions, it's almost like it's too complex, and people are used to working in a very simple way in the chatbots that we're doing right now. Could it have something to do with that, you think?
I mean, I think that's a technical barrier to entry. The idea of development is still very scary to people. I actually just finished writing an episode about vibe coding. I hate this word so much. It's like this concept that you basically write an app, all parts of it, front end, back end, security, database, through user prompts. And vibe coding is making building these kinds of apps more than leveraging AI a lot more accessible to people, but um, the security implications are absolutely horrific. There
Mm.
was an app that just had a huge data leak of 70,000 images or something because they quickly vibe coded this app. It went viral, #1 on the App Store in the US. And, the security protocols weren't there because the person doesn't know what security protocols need to be implemented because they vibe coded. So I know there's a lot of AI companies are trying to focus on this full AI deployment, development with limited human oversight. I do think it will get there soon.
Yeah.
And it's a threat to development jobs, just like translators are threatened, but we're not there yet.
Yeah,
So
but it's low code, no code. But the question that I think is very reciprocal in the localization industry as well, I'm sure you would agree, is that could you be a coder without knowing code, or for the same price, could you be a translator that uses AI without really knowing the language? I think not, and I think it would be really risky to be a coder that relies on an AI to spit out the code without really knowing what it is that you're looking at, because the risk implications would be great
absolutely.
on both ends. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, like with translation and interpreting, and this is true with AI, one wrong translated word could mean life or death. It could
Yeah.
mean loss of legal protection in
Mhm.
an IP, patent like document. It could mean, a misdiagnosis. It could lead to a lot of things. And of course, AI translation, the thing, I am very balanced in my opinion because LLMs were built for translation purposes. Transform architecture was built for translation purposes. It doesn't mean that it is at all at the level that it's able to handle those kinds of creative, high risk, high technical environments. Absolutely not. And it is very similar to development. Would you assume that risk for your company, a loss of potential revenue because your translation had a translation that insulted somebody? Would you risk that? And translation and interpreting, to be honest, like it's not that expensive, right? So it's so silly to me to risk losing possibly millions of dollars because you just want to be lazy and not thorough.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which AI features are the most misunderstood by users, and how do you design to fix around that?
I think I kind of alluded to this, but the limitations and strengths of LLMs, your traditional chatbots, they're not good at math. They're, you know, decent at certain things. I think the biggest thing to understand about LLMs, when you see them improve these performance benchmarks, for example, they are training. This is so crazy. This is another research paper that came out a couple weeks ago. They are training AI on a perfect prompt trained on the question of this standardized exam to improve these benchmarks in one perfect response. Okay. So when you see these amazing, oh, this LLM has performed 90% on the MMLU, which is this math benchmark, and it's going to replace mathematicians. You need to keep in mind that that entire prompt, perfect prompt, was given to the LLM to come up with the correct answer, which it already knew. It already knew the correct answer. If you use LLMs in the way that they're actually used, which is multi-turn conversations, you are asking a question and you ask another question, you ask another question, the efficiency drops every single time up to 40% in just 2 turns because the LLM just like doesn't know what to do with it. So I think, to go back to your question, how do you kind of design to fix that? You need to understand why, like how LLMs were built to be used, even if we're not using them right now in this way. I argue that technology should evolve in the way that we want to use it, right? But as a short-term fix, work with it in the way that it was built, loading that context up front, for example, really helps increase your performance.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how to get linguists to participate in some of the more sophisticated functionalities because I'm involved in that kind of an effort too, and with a particular TMS you might have heard of maybe as well. And what I realize is that sometimes there's brilliant things that get created, but they're not easily used by the linguist core at large. Maybe I don't know what's your theory on that, because I'd love to find the silver bullet to really bring those things not only on a silver platter, but have it be used more as well. Do you have any specific guidelines you think to make it more used, to make AI implementation and localization more user friendly?
User friendly and I would say accepted are, I don't want to say interchangeable here, but they kind of are. Linguists are a lot of them are very scared of AI. There's this split across the industry, which tends to be traditional linguists and corporations, or linguists versus linguists on whether they're going to use AI or not. I feel like some of that is principle, a lot of it is fear, because they don't understand the strengths and limitations of AI very, very, very well, and where to plug themselves into it. In that multilingual article that I actually co-wrote with my mother, the top 10 language products of the year, we were evaluating all of these products across the whole LangLock industry, and they're all different. Some were CAT tools, some were TMS, some were QA, pipelines. And how do we relate them all together? And it made us start to look at the problem very differently in the context that we were started to look at what the output goal of those tools were. And furthermore, it caused us to kind of put content into 3 camps: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 is that low, I don't want to say low effort, low risk content, Instagram comments that probably never would have been translated traditionally because the cost would have been too high, but it is making more content accessible to more people. Hypothetically, as linguists, as localization experts, that is what we want to do. We want to make language more accessible to others. So that's a good thing. But where linguists really fit very well, their jobs are not threatened, is tier 2 and tier 3. Tier 2 is like this creative, you're working on artistic expression, you're working on marketing campaigns that every word matters as you localize from English to Chinese, where the industries are different, the people are different. Companies don't want to risk that protection. And tier 3 is highly technical environments, I want to say, like, let's say biometric reports, patent, I mentioned patent registrations, everything like that. to me, tier two and tier three linguists, like you guys are good. Like you are good there. Don't try to go after tier one content, the Instagram comments that are being automated or whatever else. It's silly, right? So I think if they understood this, where they really fit into the AI realm a little bit more, they would be a little less intimidated. And I think that's kind of understanding content in this way, it will really help a lot of people.
Yeah. Often I'm also thinking about things we could do without at this point. What's one
Mhm.
thing you would remove from mostly localization tech interfaces today? Um,
Fuzzy bands. The big argument about fuzzy bands. We all know the pricing is like a mess right
mm.
now with localization. Fuzzy bands don't work, in my opinion. I've seen weighted words work a little bit better. Um, I don't think anyone's really figured out the pricing situation, but I do think that holding on to fuzzy bands isn't going to work. So I would
Well,
like
it's
that.
it's interesting though because I do think with AI and large language models, we're now getting into a situation where we're much more going to be translating in blocks instead of text strings. And
Mhm,
so the fuzzy issue kind of disappears there.
mhm.
And wouldn't you agree that we're probably marching very quickly into post-editing only environments? And in that sense, the pricing model is going to have to change, and it'll probably, if I had to guess, would go into an hourly scenario in which you're reviewing text and you're correcting pre-translated content in AI. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Um, I don't know if hourly is the best way because then the translator is going to be rushed to get through the document, as quickly as possible. I
Wouldn't you
also,
get, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but
yeah,
I just want to close the loop on this because, again, this is something very a specific issue that I have been dealing
right,
and
at work.
designing around as well.
Mhm,
And so you could it I think it becomes a partnership between the agency and the linguist in which you're not only providing the post editing format, but you're also predicting how much time it's going to take. And so that kind of takes away the issue that you just alluded to as far as estimating or rushing or correcting too much stuff before you even log into your work console, you're going to get an estimate of, X amount of time. This is going to take you 60 minutes. And if it starts taking you 70 minutes, maybe you go into a red area where it's telling you, I'm just thinking along the lines of, how you could set expectations and come to an agreement beforehand. And just like in any scenario with an agency now as well, there might be
mhm.
a point where the translator and the agency disagree on what it takes, but then it'll be a negotiation, I would assume. But you'd find a happy middle there, wouldn't you think?
I still, I see everyone talking about hourly. I see where it is attractive. Um, I think it depends because translation can often be artistic. And even when I am writing my silly little vlog scripts or going through things, I want to take the time to get every word right. So there is a risk of loss of, maybe the translation's good enough, but I think there could be a loss of artistic expression there. And actually kind of going along these lines of what you're explaining kind of in a relationship with the agency. Um, we in the think tank received a question from somebody asking, will we ever run out of linguists? And Stavrola, I don't know if you know her, she answered it so fantastically and basically said, we might come into an issue where proving our value might, I don't want to say be in question, but might be the barrier. And there's something very strange within localization and translation. Traditionally, all industries, you have to sell, you have to prove why your service is needed, right? A lot of translators and linguists and language companies, they don't want to sell. They just want that end company to already understand why they're important. So if we were to switch to like an hourly type model, I think what would be very, very, very important is for every linguist and every language company to be better at the art of selling, explaining why this is very critical that this translation is done right. You're going to lose this. This is your risk if you don't, blah, blah, blah. So it does kind of give a little bit of a buffer there. But I don't love the hourly plan, but I do know that people are trying to go that way. Maybe that's the solution. Who really knows? Because no one really knows right now.
Well, the analogy that comes to mind to me for me is restaurants, and there's different types of restaurants. There's fast food and there's four-star Michelin.
Mhm.
And in the end, when you go to a four-star Michelin restaurant, you have different expectations than when you go to McDonald's.
Mhm.
And
True.
when the meal comes out, how many times when you're in a restaurant do you think about what was put into this in the kitchen in order to bring you the meal? Probably not very often. But if there's a hair in the soup, it's going right back, right? So that's kind of, I think that's my analogy that I always use with our industry. Let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about Hey AI because that's your successful channel on YouTube, and you're very active there. More than on, I'm more of a LinkedIn guy. You're more of a YouTube person, or you're active on LinkedIn too.
Yeah.
But
Nowadays, like YouTube
nowadays,
a
yeah.
lot.
What made you start Hey AI?
I so I built this AI prototype that was presented at a TALS competition in 2023. It was basically leveraging AI to rapidly automate localization marketing analysis. And when I was building that prototype, and I did win that competition. I was constantly every single day updating myself on what the latest tech was to implement it to present it at that conference. A couple months later, I realized I hadn't been doing that every single day, and all of my information was really outdated. It's like every day something else comes out and this
Hmm.
new model, and why is it this special? And this person, it's just so much noise all the time. So to keep myself accountable, I sat down. I'm like, okay, what are the top 5 updates for the week? There's hundreds of articles. What is the top 5 most important things? And I need to distill that into my brain. And through that exercise, decided, maybe somebody else could benefit from this.
Mhm.
It forces me to be disciplined and write it down and, record a video, and it can help somebody else. So that's kind of why I started it. I don't know why people have stuck around. Maybe they like my jokes. I'm not sure, but I've just really loved to learn. It's the only way that's honestly kept me disciplined. So that's why I started it.
Yeah. How do you frame AI capabilities in ways that resonate with non-technical execs versus linguists or developers? What's the difference in approaching them?
Well, if it's a developer, I don't need to explain any terms. I don't need to dilute any jargon. I can just basically say this very complex technical architecture and not have to explain how it works in layman terms. When it's non-technical execs, when it's linguists, I'm usually trying to help them understand AI in a way that fits their everyday life. And AI is very scary to a lot of people because they don't understand it. So I try to take analogies from things that they know, McDonald's franchises, reading a book in a library, and I'm usually able to make an analogy between that and explain some pretty complicated um, topics that way. For example, I explained how DeepSeek distilled a model, OpenAI model, and what model distillation means, which kind of sounds very scary to a lot of people. But I explained, okay, there's a parent that's teaching a little student, and it kind of works for people. So it helps me understand it too. I got to be honest, I don't always understand everything I read. So I'm like, okay, what does this mean? And I have to
Right.
break it down into plain English for even myself sometimes.
It's a great way to learn doing writing. I find that myself too, that it forces me to get deeper into topics that I'm not necessarily familiar with. And I get to interview very interesting people like yourself. What's the future look like for Hey AI, and what's your focus? But for me, I want to tell you this. One of the most challenging things, and you touched upon it a little bit already, is that there's a layered audience that is
Mhm.
following me, and so I have to speak to multiple audiences at the same time without ostracizing any
Anyone
particular one. So, what's the
else?
future for Hey AI? Where is your focus going to be on?
I have kept it AI for everyone. I do have developers that watch me very frequently. One of them being a CTO of a company that you know, he's very deep into deep learning. He's writing research papers about it. Like, he's a very close follower of me. I do have people that are retirees that just found me on YouTube that just really enjoy having AI broken down in a way that is easy for them to understand. And I think I have a balance between those two. I don't focus on any particular niche. I keep it AI for everyone. Sometimes it's linguistic focus, sometimes it's not. For example, this week I will actually cover that China's AI action plan was released without an official English translation, which is so funny because so many articles came out about this Chinese AI action plan with no English translation circulated, which, their localization will be touched a bit.
Did you
But
read it in Chinese then? What you
I
do?
got a certified translation. I'm not, there's no
You
way.
you must know a family member or two that could help you with that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way I'm going to read a potential proposed blueprint for humanity using Google Translate. That's just
Yeah, you're
really
making a
hard.
great case for localization. Very, very well done. Veronica, thank you so very much for spending some time with us this morning. It's a real privilege. It's a pleasure following you and reading your content and
Thank you
staying
so
up to
much.
date on AI. I hope we get to work together again in the near future. And again, thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Appreciate it.
Me as well. Thank you for spending some time with me.